Closing arguments are currently underway in the criminal trial for former police officer Derek Chauvin. And we have this story emerging while we're waiting to see what happens with the closing arguments. Black Lives Matter protesters dropped to one knee and prepared to march after hearing Minnesota police have shot dead a man, but backtrack when it's revealed he was a violent carjacker. Wait, I'm sorry, I'm genuinely confused by this story. What about being a violent carjacker has anything to do with whether they would protest for him or not? I guess the issue is maybe it wasn't they found out he was a violent carjacker, because if we look at the patterns in who they would be willing to protest for, crimes committed aren't relevant. And to a certain degree, I can respect that. I oppose the death penalty, as I say it very often. I don't think cops should be killing people, but I, as a reasonable person, understand get a violent criminal and they have a gun and you're fighting and resisting, people get shot. So when Black Lives Matter says, look, we understand this guy was wanted for aggravated robbery, he shouldn't die, I say, okay, I totally understand that. I wish, Dante Wright wasn't killed. I mean, I sincerely mean that. I want people to be held, I want people who commit crimes to be taken to trial, stand before a jury of their peers, so we can show everyone in our community, this is not okay. This is what this person did, and we all accept it as wrong. When a person dies, it's really hard to do that, and now this officer is going on trial. I'll tell you what the main thing here is, I think, that really made these people not support the guy who was shot. The guy was white. Now, look, why would a Black Lives Matter protester march for a white guy who was shot? We had a 16-year-old kid recently, I can't remember exactly where it was, who had an airsoft gun. The cops shot and killed him. They didn't march for him either. So, I'm genuinely confused if the assertion is they accidentally were protesting for this guy until they realized that he was a violent carjacker. I'm like, a lot of these guys they march for were violent criminals. Not all of them. Some of them are law-abiding citizens. Some of them are, look, man, some of the people who get killed by cops or even get arrested are, in my opinion, doing things that should not be illegal. But if they're still illegal, the rules. There's a difficult balance between look, not everybody agrees on the same laws. It's not so simple to just say yes or no, you'll follow the rules. So there's complications here. Let's read this story, see what's going on. And then I want to talk to you about where actually, let me just tell you what we're going to talk about. We have stories like this. Violent carjackers, riots, an Apple store being burned to the ground, which you probably heard in my previous segment. We have police union buildings being set on fire. And as right now, as the nation is awaiting the deliberations in the trial of Derek Chauvin, worried about what will happen to this country, what is 60 Minutes doing? 60 Minutes is talking about the far right. Oh, I'm so worried about the Oath Keepers. Oh, shut up. It's been 4 months and they're still talking about the Capitol. We live in a digital age. I'm not worried about the Capitol. It was secured. A bunch of dumb people stormed in. A bunch of other people walked in bewildered, and they should have done that either. But we have active riots right now. Yeah, hilarious. The Daily Mail reports demonstrators in Minnesota dropped to their knees and made plans to mobilize the site of a fatal officer-involved shooting before learning the victim they were memorializing was a carjacking suspect who allegedly shot at police. Since when did that mean anything? Dante Wright was wanted on an aggravated robbery warrant. He was known to have been armed with a Ruger 45. He actively resisted arrest and dove into his vehicle. Now, the officer, Kim Potter, shot him one time. He drove off and then died. Maybe it was a lung shot, sucking wound, something like that. I'm not entirely sure. I don't know if they've done an autopsy or anything. I think it's fair to say she would have been justified in her use of force. This guy was wanted on a violent warrant and armed, and he jumped into his car and she didn't know what he was doing. Now, apparently the police department, as most of you know, said she was going to go for her taser and she made a mistake. Now she's being charged with manslaughter. She should just be like, nah, I intended to kill him because I was at, fear for my life, and she'd be better off in a legal defense. Now, again, I think she was right to go for the taser. And I think being honest is the most important thing. If that was the case, let's hear it. And let's see if she, what the results may be. But this guy was wanted for a very violent crime, and they're still rioting on his behalf. So what about this guy being a carjacker matters to them? They said the Black Lives Matter protesters who were demonstrating Sunday outside the governor's mansion could be seen in video shot by a local reporter observing a moment of silence when they heard of a police-involved shooting in Burnsville, Minnesota. This information has not been confirmed, but this group says they're heading there. Roughly an hour later, Hicks tweeted that the group was heading back to Brooklyn Center, the site of the Daunte Wright shooting, because they need more information about what happened in Burnsville first. Really? Yeah, because someone was like, yo, I think that guy was white. What actually happened in Burnsville was a wild chase on a highway in which a carjacking suspect allegedly shot at police before he was shot dead. So what? The suspect, a white male in his 20s, was shot Sunday afternoon on State Highway 13 at an interchange at the interchange of Interstate 35 West in Burnsville, Minnesota, after police said he abandoned a stolen car, tried to steal two others at gunpoint, and shot at cops. The horrifying ordeal began in the afternoon when the carjacking suspect was being sought by cops for driving a car with stolen plates. He would crash the car, only to carjack a woman at gunpoint and take off in her vehicle, police said. Police continued their pursuit and said the suspect shot at them before abandoning the stolen ride. Video provided by the Minnesota Department of Transportation shows the suspect slowing down a white sedan before jumping out and tumbling to the ground. He can be seen then running into oncoming traffic and pointing his gun at a motorist who appeared to take a sharp left turn toward a grassy median to avoid the man. There's some photos of the car driving. Police said the suspects then attempted to carjack another motorist. While video doesn't capture the fatal confrontation, police said they and the carjacker exchanged fire before the suspect was shot at roughly 3 p.m. I oppose the death penalty. I'll say it for like the fourth time today. But I understand what happened. I understand why this man is dead. Because people have a right to self-defense. The officers have a right to self-defense, and they're acting in the defense of others. This is what makes me, it's just insane. You have these cops that are being abused and sacrificed and smeared. And some of them are just willing to sit there and take it and not let people have what they're asking for. I get it. Without the police, who are you going to call? No, seriously. Now, I personally am I'm a big fan of the Second Amendment, and I own many firearms, so I'm not super concerned about who I have to call, but I would, for a variety of reasons. If someone was illegally entering my property and there was a reasonable fear of harm, or for our safety, or the safety of others, the first thing I would do is call 911. I would then get my gun from the safe, because I keep them all safely secure, and I would be prepared to defend myself. But there are a lot of people who are not prepared to take responsibility for their own defense and for the defense of their loved ones. And thus, these people are desperate for police. I think it's about time people got responsible for themselves. I think if the people of Minnesota and Minneapolis want to protest, they actually protested for this, okay? They dropped to their knee because a guy was fleeing down the highway in a stolen car and shooting at people and carjacking a woman at gunpoint. And then they're like, oh, maybe we shouldn't protest for this guy. The other guy was wanted on an aggravated robbery warrant. It's so it goes. Well, I think people need to take responsibility, and the cops should stop trying to be the responsibility for these people. The cops in this area, you need to wake up and let people take responsibility for their own actions. But I guess a lot of these cops probably just want the paycheck. They're going to say, nope, no officers were wounded in the shooting. The suspect was taken to the Hennepin County Medical Center where he was pronounced dead. Quote, all Burnsville police officers wear body cameras, and camera data will be handled by the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehensions, who will lead the investigation. A woman identified as one of the attempted carjack victims told the press that the police had no choice but to open fire. Them officers, they didn't kill him. They didn't murder him, the woman said. The guy could have killed me and my 6-year-old goddaughter. He could have killed who knows how many people. The BLM protesters were roundly mocked on Twitter for appearing to extend sympathy to the suspect before learning he was an alleged violent carjacker. Quote, I can't imagine this being my life, kneeling for criminals that would run every one of them over if they got in their way. Need more information. They found out he was a carjacker firing at the police. People have been protesting in Minnesota for the past week after the death of Wright, when an officer allegedly mistook her taser for a gun. So we know this. The closing arguments for the trial are currently underway. And for the people of Minnesota, this is the stupidity that you have to deal with. And I tell you this, most of us are going to have to deal with, because I think no matter what happens in the Chauvin trial, it's going to pop off. Well, I am honored that we have a powerful press that speaks truth to power themselves and will challenge those who would burn down our cities and leave us threatened and vulnerable. That's right. They're talking about the Oath Keepers. What? Why? Because they were involved in one riot at the Capitol? Man, these people sure are treating January 6th like the apocalypse. I get it. It was bad. But dude, I've seen worse. I've seen whole city streets set on fire, burnt to the ground. We see people protesting for violent criminals. And this is incredible. The media has created the media is obsessed, but they have created psychopathy. And I can explain to you exactly what's going on and why I'm infuriated by this. So we'll throw it over to my good friend, Bill Maher, everybody's favorite, a friend of the show. I'm kidding, by the way. I don't think he cares for this show. Bill Maher rips liberal media on COVID lies and inaccuracies. I'm not going to read this. I don't care about what Bill Maher thinks about COVID. The point is, Bill Maher complains about negative media coverage, and he says the media needs to report positive things. We get this fear-mongering. I'll tell you some ridiculous fear-mongering. There was a story in the New York Post, the stupidest article I've ever seen, where it's like some dude got the vaccine and then died the next day. And then it's like the vaccine had nothing to do with it. Why are you writing that story? And that's the New York Post, okay? And I've defended them in the past. The point is, Bill Maher mentions that we get all this negative press constantly being berated, and it's making Democrats go insane. He shows us the graph where it's like Democrats believe insane things. And then he goes, but Donald Trump is bad. It's like, bro, you're so close. Or you're just lying to us. And you know the media lied about Trump every step of the way. 95+% or whatever. Just constant negative press about the president. So here we go. They have created an addiction. It is media crack telling these anti-Trump resistance people that the far right is coming to get you. And they all believe it. They all believe this insane garbage. It's the big lie. That's what they've done. They've created it. And now this is why 60 Minutes will tell you about the Oath Keepers who aren't doing anything while people are literally burning down cities. You had a guy carjack somebody, shoot him. They were ready to protest for this guy. You had a guy wanted an aggravated robbery warrant, and they're literally protesting for this guy. And then you have the Oath Keepers, who some of them were at the Capitol, and that's it. 60 Minutes better get on the case. The FBI calls the Oath Keepers an anti-government militia with current and former law enforcement and military members among its members. 60 Minutes profiles the group, which has become a central focus in the ongoing investigation of the January 6th attack on the Capitol. The FBI putting up billboards saying, please give us tips about who these people are. The FBI tweeting out, please tell us if you know anything about these people. Snitches galore. Man, I tell you this, conservatives need to learn a lesson or two from Antifa. People, regular people, they will snitch on their neighbors in a heartbeat. Antifa ain't going to do it. They're ideologues. They will say nothing to no one. Now, maybe some informants, maybe some normies get mixed in and they panic and they'll say something. For the most part, the people at the Capitol are being ratted out by friends, family, and neighbors. Antifa? No. Nope. I'll tell you this, too. The people who stormed the Capitol weren't wearing masks or anything. They don't have the organizational understanding the left does. Antifa, they know what they're doing. They absolutely know how to organize. And some of these people don't necessarily know why they do what they do, but they do what they're told by these organizations, which allows them to be safe from the government. In the meantime, while our cities burn and we're wondering why all of this is happening, we can rest assured that our media will not be reporting on it. Severed pig's head is left outside the home of Chauvin defense witness who said George Floyd's death was accidental. You mean to tell me that while things like this are happening, we had Nancy Pelosi's house was vandalized by the far left? The media just can't give us an honest understanding of what's going on. They can't tell us about the far left extremists. They can't say, who are these people and why are they burning down our cities? Because they've created an obsession. They have created an addiction. And they themselves are addicted and they can't break away. Let me take you back in time. Donald Trump announced that there would be a moratorium on several countries. So this was going to be, they called it the Muslim ban. Well, he included, I think, Venezuela and North Korea as well. And then some people were like, there's also many Muslim countries that weren't banned. The ACLU filed lawsuits. They said Trump can't do this. He doesn't have the right. I respect that. I respect anybody who's going to challenge the authority of the federal government within reason. I think the federal government needs to have authority within reason. And I think they've often, and for the most part, extremely overstepped those bounds. So I'm like, okay, sue the government, sue Trump. The ACLU ended up gaining a ton of members. I don't know. I don't remember exactly. I think this was the moment where the shift at the ACLU happened. Then when the ACLU defended the people who organized the Charlottesville event, which became a mass riot and chaos and conflict, when the ACLU defended their right to speech, they started bleeding users like crazy. The ACLU had built an audience of addicted zealot ideologue psychopaths who were giving them money. The ACLU realized, if we stand up for principle, we're going to lose money on this one. My friends, this is called the GRIFT. The left understands the power of semantics, so they use words in clever ways. They will refer to me as a grifter, even though my opinions are fairly heterodox, and I say things like that I disagree with the death penalty. I think, we should have a higher progressive tax on higher income earners, much at odds with many conservatives. Yet they would claim that I'm being a grifter when I'm staying true to my principles. Sorry. Those of you who would sacrifice your principles in the name of tribalism or who don't have any in the first place, y'all are grifters. You're pretending to represent something. You're grifters. This is what 60 Minutes is. It's a grift. It is a con. It is to keep urban liberals scared and cowering in their bedrooms. Oh, the far right's coming for me. Meanwhile, they look out their window and they see Antifa burning down their city and they're like, peaceful protests. Talk about cognitive dissonance and just a break from reality, man. A break from reality. Do you know what this country would be like without cops? These people are imagining like a bunch of people of different races all holding hands under the rainbow and singing back and forth. The reality is, initially, without police, you'd probably have a lot of widespread crime in big cities. People would be living in fear. Eventually, I think things could improve in a certain way. In the country, I think most people would be fine in the rural areas because people got guns and they don't rely on the police all that much, which makes me think about the difference in opinions. I find very interesting. You would think it's the people in the cities who would be most interested in maintaining a police force when they've disarmed themselves. Apparently not. The people who have voted to take away their right to bear arms are also voting to get rid of the guys with guns who they can call for help. And the people who live in the countryside who defend the cops also decide to defend themselves. Only one of these is logically consistent. If you're pro-gun and pro-cop, those don't conflict with each other. You can still call the police, say, hey, I need some help with this problem, and still be armed and defend yourself. But it makes no sense to live in a big city and be like, nobody should have weapons. Not even me. I'll call the police. And then be like, but we should disband the police and bring in social workers. Okay, I get it. I guess they're anti-gun for everybody, cops included. Don't be surprised then when the criminals who have guns will then come and abuse you. This is the nature of today's political environment. I think it's time, as many have suggested, that the right needs to recognize they're second-class citizens. If a conservative goes out with an American flag and marches, they'll say it's a far-right extremist. If a black-clad leftist waving the Antifa flag, which was literally like a communist flag, goes around setting fires and burning things down, they say marchers and peaceful protesters. You may have heard in the other segment, Willamette Week saying, marchers burned down an Apple store. What? Right. Marchers did it. What is that? Somebody born in March? Marching band people? Oh, you mean violent riots. So I don't, you know what, man? I can't predict the future. I don't know what we can expect from all of this, but I can tell you the system is absolutely broken and it's like we drove off the cliff a long time ago. We're just free falling now. The media is obsessed and they want to make money. They're driven by ads and subscriptions. So they're looking to produce the content that will market well. And Scott Adams tweeted something. He said that at some point, I'll paraphrase. I don't want to misquote him. That there will be mindless drones who just read ad-driven news and then free thinkers who follow subscription-based news. I disagree because my content is both subscription-based and advertising-based. And the Washington Post and the New York Times are subscription-based. The New York Times makes more money in subscriptions than they do in advertisement. These companies, they want to get a subscriber. I'll put it this way. Timcast.com ain't going to be getting socialist subscribers. They're not going to subscribe to my content. They don't like me. Okay. So why does it matter? The New York Times is not going to get a whole lot of conservative subscribers. They probably have a decent amount. But there's a lot of people who think they're biased. So what they do is they know that they're going to have to attract a certain market, and they're going to produce content to attract subscriptions from people who agree with them and want their confirmation bias. This is what you can expect in this country moving forward, which means when the Chauvin trial concludes definitively and the verdict is in, no matter what happens, the media is going to do everything in their power to make everything as bad as possible. If they acquit Chauvin on like manslaughter but convict him of second-degree murder, the media will say Chauvin acquitted because that's the snazzy title. It's going to shock people, freak them out, and make them go in the street and burn everything down because, hey, as you know, the media likes to say if it bleeds, it leads. That's their understanding. We've heard it. Project Veritas exposed the CNN technical director saying it outright. It's all good for the networks. So for now, they're going after what makes them the most money. The fear of the far right. Why? Because the far right is few and far between. The far left, however, is massive, but it's not brand safe. And people are obsessed with the far right because some of these people, I mean, most of them agree with Antifa. So they're not going to stand up against what they agree with. They're not scared of it, even though these people are literally burning down their cities, and they should be. This is what you can expect because the media is driven by confirmation bias. They're not here to inform you about the most pressing matters. I'll tell you what I try to do. I remember people were saying, and I think I brought this up a few days ago, what are you going to do now that Trump's out of office, Tim? Like, what are you going to report on? Everyone was talking about how once Trump left, everyone in politics was going to be screwed. And I was like, dude, I was talking about Sonic the Hedgehog a year ago. I have no problem talking about what matters most. We're now looking at Black Lives Matter riots destroying cities, and we're looking at the trial of Derek Chauvin. I'm covering those things. And now I'm not particularly interested in the remnants of the Trump era. I want to know what's going on now and what's affecting people and what we should talk about. But these people talking about the Oath Keepers and talking about Trump, they're trapped in the past. They can't let it go. They need it. I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 4 p.m. over at youtube.com/Timcast. Thanks for hanging out, and I will see you all then.